But I'm going to do my best to try and not ramble for too long. It's Friday night, and quite frankly, I'd rather be doing anything else than having to read this bullshit. But here we are. It is what it is. And some of the stuff that I read throughout this really just goes a long way to emphasize exactly why I've had such an issue with this particular topic for as long as I have done so, and lo and behold, it's not exactly improving any. No, they're still coming away with the same bollocks. And first article here briefly goes on about racist incidents. It goes on to say, racism forced my daughter to move primary schools, a mum has said, okay? So this is obviously, as I say, in relation to like racist incidents, etc. Simply saying here that the number of incidents of racism or racist bullying recorded in Scotland schools has increased by 50%. Figures obtained by BBC Scotland News can reveal, according to Freedom of Information request to all 32 councils, there were more than 3,600 incidents last year compared to 2,400 the year prior. And campaigners say the true figure will be much higher as councils are not complying with government guidance to log incidents properly. The government said one of the reasons for the increase could be improved reporting. Of course, however, if you listen to the anti-racist activists, such as some of the dickheads that are quoted in these articles, they'll have you believe otherwise. But just for anybody that's not entirely familiar with the concept of what a racist incident is, well, let's go on to one of the critical race theorist websites themselves, Scottish Government endorsed website. Just says quite clearly here that racist incidents, courtesy of the Stephen Lawrence Inquiry, or the Macpherson report even, defines a racist incident as any incident which is perceived to be racist by the victim or any other person. Basically the same sort of threshold that we have for the hate crime bill. So it doesn't even have to be something that you would probably ordinarily consider to be quote-unquote racist. It could be literally anything. And it doesn't even need to be the alleged victim. And whatever scenario we're talking about here could just be somebody that overhears. That needs to get logged. That needs to get logged in the school book, right? And as a consequence of such, with the ever-increasing amount of different definitions and the broadening of the definition of what racism means to include systemic and cultural and microaggressions, etc., right, stands to reason, and of course perception as well, stands to reason that you're going to see a bit of an increase in the amount of incidents that are reported, given the fact that the definition is expanding. Hell, what do I know? Well, I know I'm just a bigot, clearly. Right. Anyway, back to the article. So, I'm not even going to butcher that name, but regardless, it says down here, I'm not going through that, that's anecdotal stuff. Figures obtained by BBC Scotland News show a large increase in the amount of incidents of racism and racist bullying recorded in schools. Campaigners have said issues are not recorded at all, and others are logged as bullying incidents. Campaigners said some issues are not recorded at all, and others are logged as bullying instead of racism. Right? In the Freedom of Information request, or response even, Highland Council had admitted that not all schools were recording racist incidents on the school recording system. Research by the watchdog Education Scotland also previously suggested many schools were not using the program properly for recording bullying incidents. Let's see what this tab showcases. Let me get this big brain here. Was it this guy? Wait, see this guy. No, man. Oh, it's the fucking... Right. Okay. Is racism on the increase? I'm sorry. The face of this guy you're about to see. Oh my god. Anyway, the Coalition for Racial Equality and Rights, or SIR, in Scotland says statistics from other organisations, including police, suggest that there's been an increase in racist incidents. Again, that's a pretty broad brush. or a broad definition, or vague, whatever. But they've also found evidence that many incidents in schools are not being recorded. Last year, they set up the Advocates for Race Equality in Schools Scotland to support parents and carers who have a child going through racism at school. Just to be clear and clarify that bullying, regardless of whatever the reason behind said bullying, like, it doesn't matter. Like, bullying's wrong. Like, I don't agree with bullying, obviously. I'm not sitting here making a video chastising the temerity of people that are complaining about legitimate incidents of kids being bullied for being a different color and whatnot. But my point is here that they're lumping that in with a definition that literally has no fucking meaning because it can mean anything, you know. And then we get this guy here, though, who's the education advocacy officer for and head advisor for the Advocates for Race Equality in Schools. And he says that hate crime reports had gone up, but it was also apparent from the research that the true figure should be a lot higher. Of course, you know? So, can't just be a simple case of maybe as more schools begin to implement means of reporting these incidents. No, that might be why there's a bit of an uptick in the amount of incidents that are being reported. No. This big brain guru has a different scenario in mind. You know, it's just, there's a lot more going on out there because the racism is everywhere. And here he is here. Mate. Fucking hell, anyway. Fuck. Oh, fuck. I've got to stop. He said, just asking a child to apologize would not help tackle the problem or the underlying problem. Goes on to say that we need to ensure that they are educated and told about why it was wrong to display that kind of behavior, the impact it can do, and see from there if there's any form of reconciliation. Then people will learn why it's wrong and how to not exhibit those behaviors. He said one of the reasons incidents were increasing could be that racist behavior is not being challenged, or it could be because there's more schools implementing procedures in order to report said incidents. That on top of the fact to prove my point, as he says it himself right fucking now, and not only does toxic content on social media get blamed to a certain extent, he then says something that I find remarkable, which goes a long way to highlight why a lot of what's being discussed here is a load of bullshit. You know, it could be something like a joke. It could be a microaggression. So I would love to know how many of these racist incidents that are being reported and cited in these articles, I wonder how many of them were microaggressions. Right? And an article like this in and of itself wouldn't be a problem per se, but the reality of the matter is that it then starts to lead into a narrative which continues to push to implement all this anti-racist bullshit in as many schools as possible, right? And then, you know, see what I'm talking about just down here. What do we have? The pupils at St. Francis Primary School have written their own anti-racism charter, right? Their anti-racism charter. How old are these kids? Why the fuck do they know anything relating to anti-racism to begin with? Begs to be seen. But, sir, the Big Brain Gurus guy group, they're calling for mandatory logging of racist incidents and bullying in schools. They said there was not enough training available for teachers. Here we go. Microaggressions. Yes, that's why we need anti-racist training available for teachers. We need to implement all these different methods in order to shoehorn in this ideology. In Glasgow East End, pupils at St. Francis Primary School have written their own anti-racist charter and set up their own equalities group. They wrote their own charter after realising the council's charter wasn't in child-friendly language. Because nothing reeks of child-friendly, quite like having your own anti-racist charter. You know. The work came about after the head teacher, Kiara Henderson, decided to attend a new course. Yes, and then it all makes sense. She decided to attend a new course in leading an anti-racist establishment at the University of Glasgow. I wonder what that group was. Could it have been the Building Racial Literacy Programme? I bet it was. She said, we have a small number of racist incidents to find them. Last year, in speaking with colleagues across Glasgow and across my learning community, I had recognised that there was a rise in racist incidents. To find them, we were hearing language and terminology that we hadn't heard for a very long time. Okay. So anyway, that leads to stuff like this. Yeah. Primary pupils should get hate speech warnings. This is unions. This is all sort of in the same conversation. The far right's on the rise. They're infiltrating the schools. They're sort of the root cause of misogyny and racism, etc. That's why we need to implement radical change. You even got STV News saying far right movements fueling racist and violent behaviour in Scottish schools. And this is obviously from that union conference from a wee while ago. But it's not limited to just that shite, right? We've even got, and unfortunately I couldn't find the article because it's not on the archive, right? But call for more black invigilators in Scottish schools. In a letter to the Scottish Government group charged with reforming education to make it anti-racist, the ambassador said, we recommend that the subgroup and SQA further collaborate to encourage black and people of colour to take up positions on an exam invigilator. You know, it's all on the same concept, right? Sadly, as I say, though, can't get this on the archive, which is really annoying. Regardless, doesn't really matter. We've got the Scottish Government must go further and faster to turn the tide on violence and abuse in schools. Right? We welcome the Cabinet Secretary's commitments to act on the warnings we have shared with her about the growing threat of the far right and gender-based violence. Right? And there's another one. This is from a few months ago. Far right movements behind rising tide of misogyny and racism in schools. Is that so? That's so.